guess I will just start. And as usual, I thought we can just start off with a bit of meditation together, and then we can do a bit of a Dhamma talk and then Q&A towards the end, and let's see how things go. So let us just fire away. So you all look it looks very nice there over in the meditation hall. And so I hope you're all comfortable and at ease. So let's start the meditation just straight away. Okay, so as always, just start out by just relaxing and just coming to a point where you feel at ease and you are enjoying just sitting on the floor. Maybe you have some positive thoughts in your mind about the Dhamma, and what a wonderful thing it is to be part of the community of Dhamma practitioners. Such a rare thing in the world, to have that little bit of sufficient wisdom to know what is the right path. What a wonderful thing it is to be here, to be part of such a wonderful community, and just build up that positive perception inside that allows you to really enjoy the meditation practice. And as you settle down in your meditation, try to find that beautiful middle way between the mind on the one hand being restless and thinking, and on the other hand being tired and sleepy. And that middle way is what you find when you get inspired by the Dhamma, you get inspired by your Kalyana Mittas and the wonderful Buddhist community around you. And also you recognize that there is nothing really of interest in the world outside. The future is just more of the same, similar kind of problems, similar kind of things that you have to deal with, of nothing of real interest. So let that future go. Nothing there to think about. It is now in the present that you build up the good qualities that create something really worthwhile. And gradually, as the mind becomes more and more settled, it's as if you feel this coolness inside, a coolness because you have a distance from the physical world outside, a coolness that makes you independent of all the things in the world. It's as if there is a security, a refuge, a real home within you. So allow that home to deepen. Focus on that home, feel this beautiful perception of independence and coolness inside, and allow that to deepen gradually, gradually, all by itself. There's no need to interfere. There's no need to make it happen. Just by enjoying what you're doing, it moves by itself. Okay, so we are coming close to the end of the meditation. And before we come to the very end, just take a moment or two just to reflect back on the process you have been through. And if you do feel a bit more peaceful and calm and at ease, if you feel more joyful and relaxed, ask yourself why that is the case. Okay, everyone, so welcome once again. And I thought today I was going to discuss a particular sutta which I really enjoy. And hopefully, I'm not sure how familiar you are with this particular sutta, as this is from the Sutta Nipata, which is one of the favorite collection for many people. And this particular sutta is in the Attaka Vagga, the fourth chapter of the Sutta Nipata. Is called the Atta Danda Sutta, which means something like the taking up of violence or something like that. And it is really about the idea of right view and then how the right view kind of transforms into the Buddhist path, into virtue, into kindness, and then gradually into the idea of awakening itself. And I don't know, I found this a very particularly powerful sutta and particularly interesting, and I think it's really worthwhile discussing some of the contents and how it affects meditation practice in particular. Now, one of the things about meditation is that there's always the question, how can we make it deeper? How can we make it more profound? Very often in meditation practice, it is as if you stop maybe, you doesn't go any deeper. You may be enjoying what you have, you may be feeling a sense of peace, you may have some degree of joy maybe even in your mind. You may have many factors coming together. And still, very often we try to find a deeper, how can we go even deeper than what we have already? And this is such an important question to ask. And this is one of the reasons why I ask you at the end of the meditation to ask yourself, how do you feel now? Have you got anywhere? Are you feel more at ease and peaceful? And if so, why is that the case? And by doing this kind of investigation, you can start to uproot some of the problems, remove some of the obstacles in the way of the path. But there's two things in particular that are supportive of meditation practice. And these two things are actually mentioned in a number of places, especially in the Satipatthana Samyutta, two supporting conditions for meditation practice. And the first one of those is very obvious. You will know that one straight away. The first one is sila, morality, kindness, our habits, the way that we lead our lives is a very important factor for meditation success. And the reason for that is very obvious, because when we are kind to other people, when we live a good life, we tend to feel good about ourselves. And when you feel good about ourselves, you have the right kind of mind state that enables meditation to happen. You have to feel good for meditation to happen. If you feel kind of negative and dark, there's no way that meditation is going to happen from that kind of mental state. So sila is obvious. But there is another factor mentioned in the Satipatthana Samyutta, which is very interesting here. And that is what they call ujjukaditti, which is basically the same thing as sammaditthi, straight view or right view. And if we have that, if we can straighten up our view, if we can look at the world in a way that more aligns with how the Buddha looked at the world, we can have more of the view of the arahant, if you like, and look at the world in that way, then our meditation becomes very powerful. Yeah, we know that the arahant has right view. Yeah, not just the arahant, even the stream enter, all the noble ones in the world, they have right view. And what is fascinating about the noble ones is that they can enter deep meditation very, very quickly. This is one of the tests of whether someone is a noble one or not. If they can enter deep meditation very quickly, that means that is one of the tests to decide whether someone is a stream enter, sotapanna, sovan in Sinhala, or even an arahant. They have that ability to enter meditation very fast. And the reason for that is because they have right view. So why is that the case? What is going on there? And what is going on is that if you have right view, it means that you know what things in the world are conducive to happiness. You know what things in the world are conducive that you should be pursuing. You know the things in the world that actually where you should attend to, what is actually going to make your life better. And you also know the things that are dangerous, the things that lead to suffering, the things that do not have the ability to lead you to happiness. You know this because you have the direct insight into the Dhamma, which is what the stream mentor has. So if we can do the same thing, if we can have enough right view to understand where we should lean the mind, what we should attend to, if we understand the things that will lead to our happiness, that will lead to peace, that will lead to all these good qualities, the more you understand that, the more your mind will lean in that direction, the easier meditation becomes. By the same token, if you understand what is suffering in the world, what the problems are in life, if you really get that in a deep way, your mind will lean away from those things. You will not be interested in those things, and your mind will then again move towards that which leads to peace, leads to calm, leads to joy, leads to the bojjhangas. These are all the bojjhangas, yeah, the peace, the calm, and the joy. It leads to all of those things. And then the mind moves towards stillness all by itself, because you know where happiness actually is to be found, where peace is to be found. So this is what right view can do for us. It can lead the mind in the right direction. Now, if you look at the way that right view is often explained in the suttas, the usual way it is explained as, you know, you have an idea of rebirth, you have an idea of karma, you have the idea of, you know, beings that are spontaneously arisen, you have the idea that good actions lead to good results, bad actions lead to bad results, and these kind of things. This is what you find as a kind of standard definition of right view. But what we really want to do is we want to have a view that we actually understand. Yeah. If I say to you that right view, rebirth is right view, well, okay, maybe that is true. Actually, it is true. Rebirth is right view, but it may not touch you in a deep way. It may not do anything to you. Just knowing rebirth or accepting rebirth doesn't have any emotional impact on you. It doesn't make you feel that you have an insight into these teachings. It doesn't mean that you have any feeling about these teachings. And what we want to do is we want to have a view that leads to feelings, because feelings are what drive us on the path. If you want to have right intention, samma sankappa, second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, the way to have right intention is to have emotions that drive you towards the practice. That is what right intention really is about. The stronger those emotions are, the greater your desire to practice, the greater your ability to move forward on this path. So right view has to have an emotional impact on us. It has to make us feel something, feel a sense of urgency, feel a sense of desire to practice. That is when right view works. It's not enough to say, yeah, I believe in rebirth, I believe in karma. That is not really enough, because very often, it doesn't do anything to us. So how can we get this? Well, there's a number of ways of doing this, but really what we very often have to do is we have to contemplate, we have to reflect on the teachings of the Buddha, we have to ask the question, what do these teachings mean to me in my life? When the Buddha says right view, well, what does that mean for me? What effect does that have on my life if I have right view? What does it do to me? And if you are able to make that right view real in your own life, ask yourself, what does it mean in terms of my relationships? What does it mean in terms of my worldview, in terms of how I think about everything in life, politics, the world around me, climate change, everything in this world? Then it starts to have an impact, because these are the things that we care about in the world. And the things that we care about, that is where our emotions are invested, and that is where things can have an impact. So I would like to have a look at this sutta, because this particular sutta, the Atta Danda Sutta, is a sutta which really is about right view. And it's a very interesting sutta, because this is really the Buddha talking about his own life. Yeah, it's like, if you might call it, an autobiographical sutta, where the Buddha talks about what happened to him when before he was enlightened, and how he had right view, and how that right view drove not the Buddha yet, the Buddha to be, how it drove the Buddha to be, to practice, and then achieve that awakening which he eventually achieved. So this is why it is fascinating. It's about right view, and it's also about the Buddha's life story at the same time. So what I will do, I will share the screen with you. Hopefully you can see the writing. If you cannot see the writing, don't worry, I will read it out as well. And then I will discuss a little bit these passages in the Atta Danda Sutta. And hopefully we'll see how we go with that. And hopefully it will be meaningful to you. So here we go. Okay, so I'm assuming that you now can see what I can see. So this is the Atta Danda Sutta, taking up arms, it says here. You could also say taking up violence. Violence is another way. The word danda in Pali has this idea of violence, or arms, or stick, or weapons, and this kind of things. So this is this sutta. So maybe what I will do, maybe I will read out the whole sutta first of all. The most interesting part, actually, let me just read out the first part of the sutta, and then I will come back and do each verse in detail afterwards, just to give you an idea what is going on here. So this is what this sutta says. This is the translation, and you may know this translation. This is Bhante Sudato's translation, and it's probably one of the most recent translations available into English of the Atta Danda Sutta. So this is how it goes. Peril stems from those who take up violence. Just look at people in conflict. I shall extol how I came to be stirred with a sense of urgency. I saw the population flounder like a fish in a little puddle. Seeing them fight each other, fear came upon me. The world around was hollow. All directions were in turmoil. Wanting a home for myself, I saw nowhere unsettled. But even in the settlement they fight. Seeing that, I grew disenchanted. Then I saw a dart right there, so hard to see, stuck in the heart. When struck by that dart, you run about in all directions. But when that same dart has been plucked out, you neither run about nor sink down. Okay, so maybe I'll stop there, because now it kind of moves on a little bit, and it kind of moves on to the practice part. This first part here is really about the what I would call right view. So let's go back to the beginning. I just wanted to read it out to give you a little bit of an idea what is going on here. Some of you may know these verses already quite well, but they are a different way of looking at right view from what you normally see in the suttas. But you can see here how the Buddha, this is the Buddha to be the wisest person in Buddhist history, or I would say in world history. There's no one quite like the Buddha. He is like the greatest spiritual master in world history. And this is one of the things that makes it such a wonderful thing to be a Buddhist, because basically we have the greatest spiritual master here. It doesn't get much better than that. So we are in a very fortunate position. And here you have the Buddha to be, and even the Buddha to be, even though he had so much wisdom and was so far ahead of everyone else, he too was stirred with a sense of urgency. He too was fearful, as he saw later down. Bhaya is the Pali word. Bhaya means fear, danger or fear, depending on the context. I don't know if you have the same word in Sinhala. I can imagine you probably do. And so you can see the Buddha here is in many ways very similar to the situation we are in. Sometimes I'm sure when you see the world and you see the problems in the world and you see all the crazy things that people do, sometimes you feel a bit fearful. You feel a bit the danger in the world. And maybe that too, if you think about that in the right way, you will have the same reaction as the Buddha to be had. The reaction is not to continue having fear. The reaction is to get the sense of urgency. That is the purpose of what right view is all about. So here, the Buddha to be, or the Buddha starts off by saying, peril stems from those who take up violence. Just look at people in conflict. The idea that the world basically is full of violence. The idea that whenever there is peril here, the word Pali word is bhaya again, bhaya, and it also means like fear and danger. The danger in the world is all the violence around us. Just look at people in conflict. When you see the conflict in the world, this is what we fear. This is kind of so unpleasant when you watch the news on TV or whatever. You see what is going on. Sometimes it happens in one's own country, other times in other countries, sometimes in one's own neighborhood, sometimes within one's own family. Sometimes our whole society is rife with these things. And sometimes we should feel ourselves so lucky if you live in a place, you live in a family where you have a degree of harmony and there is no conflict, there is no violence. This is one of the great things about living in a good monastery. You kind of move towards more harmony as a consequence. And that is what is so important about this. And then from seeing that violence in the world, then the Buddha to be gets the sense of urgency. So this is a very important aspect of right view. It's seeing the negative aspect of our society, seeing the danger in human society and how these problems cannot really be fixed. Trying to fix these problems is actually going about things the wrong way. The right way is to be stirred onto the spiritual path, getting right intention, getting the sangvega being the sense of urgency whereby you want to move on. That is the right reaction to seeing the problems of the world and having right view. So let's see what the Buddha has to say. I saw this population flounder like a fish in a little puddle. Seeing them fight each other, fear came upon me. You're seeing the population flounder. It means like they don't really, their kind of floundering is like they are like shivering or quaking. Floundering is like, in this case, it means like a fish in a little puddle trying to move. Quivering in this puddle, not really being able to escape because only a small puddle. There's no way out for a fish being in a puddle like this. And so the fish is floundering, and floundering means basically it's on its way out. There is no escape. The fish is in serious trouble when it is in a small puddle like this. And the world is a small puddle. Yeah, it is. This is more obvious in the modern world when we are so close to each other. Many of you have traveled around many places in the world. I have myself been to Sri Lanka many times, and of course, many, many other places in the world. And when you travel around the world, one of the things that you see is that people everywhere are basically the same. We are all the same. We have the same problems. We have the same fears. We have the same aspirations. We have the same things that we like to do. And all of us, every single person in this world, has more problems than they would like to have. I always like to ask people in the assembly, is there anyone who hasn't got enough suffering in their life? Everyone has enough suffering. Nobody wants more suffering. Yeah, we are all floundering here. We all have this staying together, and through that staying together, we often end up fighting each other. We are in this little puddle, this little world, everyone with the same fears, the same aspirations, the same problem, and then we fight each other on top of that, just to make things even worse. And this is such a problematic thing. Yeah, it is such a it is such a terrible thing in a sense that we cannot live in harmony in this world. We always end up fighting each other in one way or another. And when you fully understand the consequences of that, when you fully understand why this is happening, it is natural for you, for some fear, for some danger to arise inside of you. You just want to get out of it because you understand this is really, really problematic. So why is it like this? What is actually going on here? Why is it that we live in this world together and still we fight each other all the time within the family, within the village, within the city, within the country, between countries? I'm sure that once we kind of, the Martians become known to us, we will be fighting with the Martians as well. We always fight anyone, yeah, aliens or humans or whatever it is. We cannot seem to stop these things. Why is that the case? And there's a very beautiful sutta. This is the Sakka Panya Sutta, the questions of Sakka, the Devinda, the Lord of the Devas. And Sakka Panya Sutta is found in the Digha Nikaya, the long discourses of the Buddha, number 21, I think it is, in the long discourses. And in this sutta, Sakka, this is Sakka, the Lord of the Devas, comes down to the Buddha. And he asks the Buddha a very beautiful and profound question. He says to the Buddha, he says, why is it the case that when all people in the world, they want to live in harmony, they want to live in peace, they want to live with kindness to one another, they want to live like brothers and sisters in the world, why is it that when we actually want this, and I'm sure every one of you wants the same, we want to be in peace and we want to live in harmony with each other. Why is it when we want this, still we fight each other, still we are in conflict, still we have all these problems in the world? It's very interesting, isn't it? How come that when we want one thing, we get something completely different? And then you get this very profound reply by the Buddha. And it's one of these replies whereby the Buddha goes stage by stage, from one cause to another cause, all the way down to the root cause of what the problem is. I'm not going to go through every stage. I can't remember every stage anyway, so I wouldn't be able to do it. But basically what the Buddha is saying is that, well, the reason why we live in violence in the world is because we have the idea of ownership. We own things in the world. And once you have ownership, then you have the protecting of the things that we own. When you have the protecting of things that we own, that is because of desires, and aversion towards things. And then the reason why we have desires and aversions, the Buddha brings it back stage by stage, all the way back to the very source. And the source of this, the Buddha says, is what he calls papancha sanya sanka. And papancha sanya sanka sounds like some very strange word, and in some ways it is very strange. But papancha is this tendency for human beings to always proliferate, always make things out of existence, things which isn't really naturally there, but which we create out of our minds. Yeah, this is the root problem. All this papancha, all this proliferation in the mind. What does that actually mean? What is that proliferation in the mind? Well, what it is largely about, first of all, about craving. All the cravings, the desires that we have in the world. Yeah, it is about the conceit, the pride, the sense of me, the sense of identity that we have inside of us. Those are the two main things. And it's also about views, because views also are very much about who we are as human beings. And these three things, the three things about conceit, views, and craving, what they all have in common is that they come from the sense of self inside of us. As long as we have a sense of self, as long as we have this feeling that we are an individual identity in this world, which is somehow separate from everything else, and we look after ourselves in a particular way, from that comes this massive proliferation. From that comes all the desires and the aversions, all the protection of our belongings, all the belongings that we amass for ourselves. And then from that, then ultimately comes the violence, the problems, the wars, the all these things that we don't want to have, we still have them. And this is very profound. It is very profound because it means that as long as we have a sense of self, and almost everyone in the world has a sense of self, only the arahant has no sense of self. As long as we have a sense of self in the world, there will be violence, there will be conflict, there will be problems, there will be wars, there will be people fighting with people. It comes ultimately from the sense of self. And when you understand that conflict in the world is rooted in the sense of self, it's just here, like the Buddha is saying here, he's seeing everyone fighting each other, and he's seeing that there is no way out of this. Because when it comes from the sense of self, it is such a profound thing that there's no way we can overcome that sense of self as a society. So as a society, there will always be conflict. There will always be fear. There will always be wars and fighting and all of these kind of things, because it is rooted in something which is so human, so much part of who we are. So this is what the Buddha is seeing. He's seeing the inevitability, the necessity, in the world of fighting. Maybe we can alleviate it a little bit by having good governments. Maybe we can alleviate it a little bit by teaching good teachings like the Buddhist teachings or whatever, but we can never overcome it as a society. We can maybe overcome it as individuals by practicing the path in the right way, but not as a society. And you can see what happens here. Once you get this, you start to turn away from that society because you realize actually there isn't really any hope for that society. We may get better technology. We may get, whatever it is in the world, but there are certain things that we cannot do anything about. Some of the most fundamental things that we cherish, peace, harmony, etc., can never be guaranteed in a society such as ours. There will always be fighting and violence and problems. And then, of course, your mind starts to turn. It turns around because you start to be ready to give up that world. You start with samaditi, the first factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, and that moves you on to the nekama sankappa. Nekama sankappa is the intention to renounce, the aim to renounce, because you're no longer interested in the world. You give up that world because you understand that it is problematic. This takes time. This is not something that you can do straight away. This is a kind of reflection that works slowly over time. But the more you understand the downside of the world, the more your mind draws back from that world. And as it draws back from the world, your meditation becomes more profound as a consequence. I was saying at the very beginning how very often when we meditate, what happens is that the mind may calm down to a certain level. And then when it comes down to a certain level, it doesn't go any further. It like stops in a certain way. And the reason why it stops is because we have certain attachments. Yeah, we're holding on to the body, we're holding on to the five senses or whatever. This is why the meditation stops. There's always some attachment there which is stopping us. And so the idea with this kind of right view, seeing the world in the right way, is that it makes you less interested in that world. And being less interested in that world means you're also less interested in the five senses, because that world is really just the five senses. That whole world is our experience through the five senses. So as you withdraw from that world, it allows your meditation to become deeper as a consequence. Right view, samma ditthi, leading to samma sankappa. You can see it right there, how this must work out. So this is what the Buddha was saying, yeah? And this is what fear arose even for the Buddha, just like fear might arise in each one of us, yeah? Because we see the danger here. In the same way, the Buddha also had that kind of fear. And then the Buddha says, the world around was hollow. All directions were in turmoil. Wanting a home for myself, I saw nowhere unsettled. The world around is hollow. What does that mean? Well, it means that precisely that there's nothing to hold on to in the world. There's no essence in the world. There's nothing to grasp. There's nowhere to stand. There's no way you can relax. There's no way you can be at ease, because the world is always waiting to change, to be violent, to do bad things. Yeah, so you can never really relax in the world because change is always around the corner. It is hollow, nothing that you can hold on to in this world. And I kind of like this idea that, the idea of standing somewhere. The moment you stand somewhere, the idea of impermanence is almost as if the ground is always shaking. The ground is always moving under your feet. Yeah. The moment you take a stand somewhere, you think, I can stand here, I'm going to relax here. Then suddenly the ground starts to shake a bit more. And then you fall over and you hurt yourself. There's nowhere to stand in the world. There's nowhere we can relax. There's nowhere we can settle down. There's nothing to hold on to. Because it is all empty, it is all hollow. There's nothing which is there reliable in this world. The world is inherently unreliable. All directions are in turmoil, always changing, moving around, being violent, being troublesome, one person fighting with another. This is the nature of this existence. And the Buddha says, wanting a home for myself, I saw nowhere unsettled. We all want a home for ourselves. And the reason we want a home is because a home is a place where you can relax. A home is a place where you kind of feel that you are safeguarded from the world. You have four walls around you. You have a roof over your head. And you feel kind of safe. You can lock your front doors so no burglars come in. Yeah? This is the idea of a home. But the Buddha to be says, actually, there is no such place. There is no real home, because the whole world is settled by turmoil. The whole world is settled by impermanence and uncertainty. And wherever you try to settle down, that turmoil, that uncertainty is going to catch up with you and is going to lead to problems. There is nowhere to settle. Yeah, everything is unsettled here means it's out of control. That's what the idea is behind this phrase in this particular context. So if you want a real home, if you want a place where you can relax, what is that place? And the answer is, again, that you have to withdraw from that world outside. That world outside is never going to give you that sense of security that you want from a home. A home is something you find in your meditation practice. When you let go of the whole world around you, you can feel that your senses are becoming distant. Yeah, it's as if the world is kind of gone, and it's kind of a feeling of good riddance. And you start to feel peaceful inside. You start to feel some joy bubbling up in your mind as you do that. And you know when you do that, that getting rid of the world actually is a marvelous and beautiful thing. And some of the greatest meditation masters in the world, One of those being Ajahn Shah, who was Ajahn Brahm's teacher. He had this beautiful expression of your real home. Your real home is samadhi, is inside of you. When you go inside, that is where you find real security. And the reason why it is real security is because you have left the sensory world behind. You are no longer affected by the turmoil, the hollowness of the sensory world. And you find the only place where you can find real peace, where you can enjoy yourself and you know that you are safe from all the problems in the world. It's such a marvelous way of thinking about a real home, the real home within, rather than trying to find these things outside, where actually they are not really available. But even in their settlement, they fight. Seeing that I grew averse, or I grew, what is the best word here? I grew, I think it's stronger than uneasy. I think uneasy is too weak. Arati is the Pali word. It means like really fed up, yeah, or I even repelled. I grew repelled by that world. Then I saw a dart there, so hard to see, stuck in the heart. Yeah, so the idea here, even in the settlement, they fight. So people try to settle somewhere, but of course, because it is not a real settlement, it is only an external home in the world, which is always dangerous. You just continue fighting. The fighting never stops. It may stop temporarily, then it comes back again. Sometimes we may fight merely by words. Sometimes we just fight within our own minds. Yeah, when you get angry with someone, that is like fighting inside of your own mind. That anger within is the seed that eventually leads to bad speech. It leads to fighting outside, and it leads to all of these other things. So the problem here is very broad, a very large one. And then, of course, when the Buddha sees this, that the fighting always goes on, he grows repelled. It's like the whole thing, he just wants to get away from this whole thing because he understands how dangerous it is. And this is the kind of the big problem here. So we're always fighting with each other. There's one little thing I would like to add, which is I find a very beautiful simile for also explaining why there is fighting in the world. And this is a simile that you find in one of my favorite suttas. Actually, every sutta is my favorite, but this is also one of these suttas. And this is found in the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle length sayings of the Buddha, number 54, the Potalya Sutta. And it has all these similes of the downside or the danger of the sensory objects of the world. And one of these similes is the simile of what is called the lump of meat. It's a simile of a bird that gets hold of a lump of meat. You can imagine if you are a bird, you are very happy. Yeah, meat is very hard to get if you are a bird. And the bird is so happy, it gets a lump of meat, don't know where it got it from. But because meat is very popular with birds, as soon as that bird flies off, all the other birds comes after it. They also want the same meat. Yes, they fly after the first bird and they try to rip that meat out of the beak of the first bird. And that first bird is in big trouble. And the only way that that first bird can survive is by giving up the meat. Cannot hold on to it. That is the only way to survive. Otherwise, the other birds will tear that bird apart because some of the other birds are even bigger, even stronger than the first bird. And this idea is that we fight. The lump of meat here is the sensual objects of the world. Yeah, just like the bird fights over the meat, human beings, we fight over the sensory objects of the world. Very often we desire the same partners. Yeah, we desire the same wife or husband. Very often you get married to someone who is very nice, and then you get jealous. You get jealous because other people also desire that person. Yeah, this kind of rivalry in the world for the same people, because the same people tend to be popular with everybody. Or the fighting that we have to make enough money in our lives, the fight that we have at work, maybe to get a promotion or whatever, the fight that we have when we are children over the toys or the cake or the sweet or whatever it is, the fights that we have over the inheritance from our parents, the fight that nations have over resources. Some of the wars in the world are fought over resources around the world. And the problem is that the world only is so large. The economy is only so large. The pie that we have to share with each other is only so large. So if for me to get a larger piece of the pie, I have to push you out of the way. I have to have violence towards you. And when I use violence towards you, then I can get a larger piece of the pie. And as human beings, we are so greedy that we don't stop at violence. We're happy to use violence if that will be to our own good, if that can actually, help our own interest. We will often use violence. Very often when there are relationship problems, or maybe our partner or something maybe wants to leave us because they found somebody else or whatever, terrible violence can happen in those situations, because these are situations of great attachment, very powerful emotions in human beings. And everywhere around the world, you see a lot of what they call crimes of passion, when people kill because precisely within the family environment, because of the problems of love problems, basically within the family, between the husband and the wife. So the problem is that, again, this idea that, whenever we live in the sensory realm, there will always be violence, there will always be rivalry, there will always be conflict. It is impossible to get out of that. As I said before, it is sourced, it comes ultimately from the sense of self, but it expresses itself in greed, in desires, wanting more, wanting this for myself. And it means that the entire sensory realm is fraught. It is full of these things. You cannot avoid violence and problems in the sensory realm. And it makes the whole sensory realm so unpleasant. We think of the sensory realm as something beautiful and delightful because we're going to enjoy ourselves, we're going to go traveling, we're going to see this and that. But actually, there is another side to that sensory realm. With that beauty, with the things that we enjoy, comes the violence, comes the conflict that is inherent in that realm. Anyway, then the Buddha says, and this is where we come to the second noble truth, He has now shown the problem that there's always, the realm that we live in is always problematic. And then he says that he sees a dart there, hard to see, stuck in the heart. And of course, that dart is craving itself. It is craving that drives this problem, Ultimately, it is the sense of self, but craving is one of the greatest manifestations of the sense of self in the world. So he sees the dart. He's beginning to see the solution to the problem. When struck by that dart, you run about in all directions. But when that same dart has been plucked out, you neither run about nor sink down. When we have the dart of craving in our hearts, then what do? We keep on running around in our lives. We are like the swift mountain current coming down the mountain, driven by craving, slaves to craving, each one of us. We think that we are in charge, and craving is acting to support us and to help us get what we want. It is actually the other way around. We are tanha dasa. We are the slaves to craving. This is the problem. That is why we run about in the world. But when we pluck out that craving, you stop running about, because you know that real happiness is to be found by sitting down, by crossing your legs, by going to a meditation center, by sitting in your room, by just letting go of all of that. That is where real happiness and contentment is to be found. The running around in the world is in vain. There is nowhere in the world you will find what you're looking for. So pluck out the dart. Then you neither run about nor do you sink down. sink down is like when you run around in the world and you get despondent, you get sad because you're not able to get what you want. Yeah, you get depressed maybe, or you feel terrible about your life because you not able to achieve what you want. This is also the fault of craving itself. And the moment the dart has been plucked out, you stop running around like a headless chicken, as they say, moving around so swiftly like a mountain current. Nor do you have the opposite side, the depression, the sadness of not getting what you want. Now, this is where you can find that real satisfaction that actually makes life really, really worthwhile in a beautiful way. So, that is the initial part of this beautiful sutta, the Atta Danda Sutta. And this is like setting up the right view, the understanding of the limitations of the world, the understanding that the only way that you're going to be able to extract yourself, to come out from those limitations of the world, is to remove that craving, that running around after those things. That is the real problem. So I would recommend you, I'm not going to read out any more of the sutta. The rest of the sutta is basically about the practice that we have to do, yeah? And of course, that practice, you are doing it already, the meditation, the sila, all of the good things. And then the very last part of the sutta is about the arahant, the noble one, who has achieved the very end of that path. But the main thing here is just to point out that the beginning all of this, the beginning of the Buddhist path is always right view. And if you can strengthen that right view, if you can learn to think about the world in a constructive way, in the way that stirs you inside, yeah, and that right view will lead to the samvega. It will lead to the sense of urgency inside of you. And when you have that sense of urgency inside of you, then comes the samma sankappa, the right intention, which then drives the whole path. So see if you can strengthen right view. I think these are some of the areas that are the most important for having success on the Buddhist path. And so see if you can do something with that. And if you can do something with that, you may find that your meditation becomes deeper, your sila becomes more profound, you have more joy and happiness in the world. It sounds very strange. You have to see the danger in the world to have more happiness. You have to see the problems. You have to see the downside. And seeing the downside in Buddhism, actually, it often leads to an upside instead. And this is kind of the weird thing about this spiritual path there. So, that is all I want to say for now, and I will be very happy to open up for some questions that you may have. So please, Rohanta, let's take some questions. I'll stop by. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Hello. Hi, Swanwansi. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Perfect. So the first question that we have is, it appears that Buddhism in the Theravada countries is coming more towards hardline and conservative, while in the West, the same Theravada is winning new followers. If so, is there some learning we can learn from the phenomenon?
I think so. I think there's always something we can learn. And I think one of the reasons sometimes why we have a kind of hardline Buddhism very often, if you look at the Buddhism, it's supposed to be gentle, it's supposed to be soft, it's supposed to be caring for all living beings, regardless of who they are, whether they are Muslims or Hindus or Christians or Buddhists, or whether they have no religion or whatever. It's supposed to be a very gentle and kind and compassionate teaching. And I think one of the reasons why we get hardliners is because instead of taking Buddhism as a practice, we take Buddhism as a national pride. We become proud of being Buddhists, and we think, yeah, I'm a Buddhist. And because we identify as Buddhists, we want to fight in the name of Buddhism. Yeah, we want it means so much to us. It's so much part of our personality, so much part of who we are, what we identify with, that we forget the practice, and instead we want to even fight for Buddhism. We saw this in particular in Burma sometimes. There were certain monks who were very kind of nationalistic, and they were saying that Buddhism, we have to even fight for Buddhism because fighting for Buddhism is the right thing. If we lose Buddhism, then our society will be doomed, and these kind of things. And of course, if monks start to say that, then society at large will tend to follow along. And society at large will also become more violent and more, negative. So we should not identify as Buddhist in that way. It's the wrong way of identifying with Buddhism. What we should identify with, instead of saying, I am a Buddhist, we should instead identify as practicing Buddhist. Yeah? Identify with being someone who practices these things. And if we identify with the practice rather than actually the identity of what it is, then it is always going to be a positive thing, because it means that you identify with kindness, you identify with compassion, you identify with trying to understand other people, you identify with peace, you identify with meditation practice, and all of these other things. And then we remove that problem that nationalism very often can lead to. So I must admit, I'm worried a bit about the world, because the world, we have many places around the world, people are becoming very nationalistic, looking after our country, we are better than others, we've got to fight the people who, challenge our country or whatever. And I think it's a very, very dangerous way to go, because it leads only one direction. It leads to the direction of war. It leads in the direction of conflict. And the more of these kind of ideas we bring into our society, the more likely war becomes. We can see it also in the big nations around the world, the big nations of, United States and China, also where there's a lot of nationalism going on. It's everywhere in the world, Buddhist countries, non-Buddhist countries. And so we should really try to come back. What is it that the Buddha taught? What is it that we should do? We should identify with the practice, not merely being Buddhists.
Thank you very much, Brahmali. Then the next question we have is, can those in the Deva realm reach Nibbana easier than those in the heaven realm?
The Deva realm and the heaven realm?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, usually when we say heaven realm in English, usually we mean the Deva realm. It's usually the same realm, usually. I guess the question is it easier as human beings compared to Devas? Maybe I can answer that question. It's very hard to say what is the easiest realm. Maybe human realm is the easiest, because this is where the Buddha was born, perhaps. But it is also interesting. There is no reason to think that it is impossible to become an Arya, a noble one, in the Deva Loka. It may very well be possible. If you read the sutras, you see many Devas who become Sovan stream enters. You see many Devas who even become higher attainments. And so it seems to be possible. So I don't think it's necessary to make a determination that must be reborn in the human realm in the future, because I think it's possible also to practice Dhamma also in the Deva Loka as well.
Thank you. And the next question is related with anicca. Did anicca take the precedence, or does cause and effect?
It's the same thing. Cause and effect in anicca is the same thing. Anitya or anicca. Because when there is cause and effect, there is also impermanence. This is kind of the whole point of impermanence. So anything which has a cause in the world must be impermanent, because the cause only lasts for a certain time. Then when the cause is gone, the result will also go. This is what dependent origination is about. In dependent origination, you have the The causality, it begins with avidya. Avidya, often translated as ignorance into English. Maybe delusion is better. And because of that delusion, you have the sankhara. The sankhara is the will, is the activity, the doing things in the world. If you take away the cause, you take away the avidya, there is no more sankharas. So that's why sankhara is impermanent. Yeah, this is one reason why it is impermanent. So cause and effect and impermanence are two sides of the same coin. Things are impermanent because of cause and effect, and because of cause and effect, things are impermanent. The alternative is permanence. Yeah, if you have permanence, like for example, you have in a theistic religion like Christianity or Islam. If in Christianity, Islam, you have this idea of God or the idea of a soul, and the idea of a God and soul is something which is outside of nature, outside of cause and effect. And because there's no cause and effect, it's permanent. It's always standing there without movement. And this is the idea of something supposedly permanent. So, yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn Brahmali. And next question is a little bit long. I'll read it out fully, and I'll also type it in the chat for you. In the Patama Manama Sutta, Buddha tells the stories of the two earthen pots, one filled with butter and the other with pebbles. The butter rises to the top whilst the pebbles sink to the bottom of the pot. Such is the law of nature, where it is one's actions that determines one's karma. What is the purpose of doing meritorious acts in the memory of a deceased loved one?
The purpose is that karma is very complex. Yeah, karma is very. It depends on many factors which karma will ripen at any particular time. So, in certain cases, someone may have very bad karma, and if it's a very bad karma, it's like the stones in the pot, and the stones go straight to the bottom. Maybe you get reborn in the hell realm, or you get reborn in the animal realm, or something like that. Yeah. Then of course there's no way out. But sometimes your karma is like a little bit bad. Yeah. Maybe you don't. Maybe it's like a piece of wood. Yeah. Or like a heavy piece of wood. It sinks a little bit, and then it kind of floats in the middle of the water. Yeah. It doesn't really go all the way down or all the way up, but it floats somewhere in the middle. And then because the karma is kind of ambiguous, it is not very strong one way or the other. If you are able to reach that person and you can make them think about something positive, something nice, which can ripen some good karma they have done, then it can make them rise to the surface. So it depends on how bad the karma is. If the karma is not very heavy, then there is a chance of influencing that. Yeah, you can imagine, let's say that you are on your deathbed yourself, and maybe something happens on your deathbed which makes you very sad. Then that sadness or whatever may then influence perhaps how you get reborn. Yeah, because you feel sad. Maybe you remember some bad things from your life, and then maybe that has some kind of influence on you. Alternatively, on your deathbed, if you are wise, you get Ajahn Brahm to come to your deathbed. Yeah, Ajahn Brahm tells you a few jokes, it tells you a few nice stories, you have a good laugh, you remember some good things from your life, and bang, yeah, all the good karma ripens as a consequence. I really advise you, get Ajahn Brahm to come on your deathbed if you can. If Ajahn Brahm happens to be in Sri Lanka, yeah, you can do that, and he will lighten up your spirit. And then because of that, you remember something positive, and then you get a better rebirth. In the same way, when we make merit for the departed, if they can feel our intention, yeah, mom and dad, I'm doing this for you. Yeah, I'm doing this because of gratitude for all the kindness that you gave me over all those years. Thank you so much. Now I will make an act of merit on your behalf. And you mean that coming from your heart, yeah, in a very nice, beautiful way. And if they are born in the ghost realm, because the ghost realm is like in between, yeah, it is neither very bad karma nor good karma, it's a bit like in between. If they are still around, which they often are in the ghost realm, they can feel your kindness. That may help them to ripen some good karma, which bang, takes them up to a better rebirth as a consequence. So that is how I would integrate those two different teachings. Because there are some very clear instances in the suttas where the Buddha says that yes, you can make good karma on behalf of the departed. There's a very well-known sutta called the Janusone Sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya 10s. I think it is 171 or something like that, where the Buddha discusses with the Brahm in Janusoni precisely about this question. Is it possible to receive the kindness of others if you get reborn, in the ghost realm?
Thank you. And then we have another question. Dear Ajahn Brahmali, could you please let us know whether there is a list of suttas which may have some later additions, such as the Great 40 Sutta, so that when we are reading the suttas and come across something ambiguous, we could check and verify?
Okay. It's very hard to give a list because almost every sutta has a little bit added to it. And I will give you an example of that. So when you have the suttas, it always starts evam me suttam. You know that evam is like, thus have I heard. This is what I have heard. And then it says ekang samayang bhagava sarvatiyang viharati, or something like that. And at one time, the Buddha, the Bhagava, was dwelling viharati in Savatthi, or something like that. Every sutta begins like that. And that has been added later on. It's not the word of the Buddha. So it has been added maybe at the first Buddhist council, the Sangiti, the famous Sangitis. And actually what it says, if you read the account of the third Sangiti, which is found in the Vinaya Pitaka, that's exactly what it says. Mahakassapa, he asks Venerable Ananda and also Venerable Upali, he asks them, where was that sutta spoken? And then they say, oh, it was spoken at Savatthi, it was spoken by so-and-so. So we know that this information came afterwards, So you can see that every sutta has a little bit added to it. But for many suttas, it's just the beginning and just the end. So it doesn't matter so much. So the best way for deciding these things, it's impossible to really make a comprehensive list. But the best way is to look at some of the research that has been done in this particular area. There is a quite thorough comparative study of the Majjhima Nikaya, and it compares all the suttas in the Majjhima Nikaya with other suttas in other traditions, like the Chinese or the Sanskrit or whatever, and it looks at what is most likely to be the earliest. But generally speaking, you can be quite secure that the Pali suttas are actually quite authentic. It's very rare that there is something added. The Mahachattarisaka Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 117, the Great 40, is one exemption that seems to have a bit of Abhidhamma content in it. Another exemption is the Anupada Sutta. Anupada Sutta is Majjhima Nikaya 111. And that also seems to have a little bit of kind of Abhidhamma content in it. There's a few things like that, but it is actually so little that generally speaking, you don't actually need to be very concerned. If you read those suttas, you can be pretty sure that what you're getting is the word of the Buddha. When it comes to the Anguttara Nikaya, it's a little bit more tricky because Anguttara Nikaya has a lot of suttas, and some of them may very well be a little bit later. But and there's one sutta, for example, that seems to be like Jaina, have a Jaina content. They talk about making an end of all karma. And making an end of all karma is not really a Buddhist idea, it's a Jain idea. And you find that in the Anguttara 10s, one of the suttas there. There are a few small things like that. But generally speaking, if you read the Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya, and Anguttara Nikaya, generally speaking, you are on very safe grounds. And if you have any doubts about something, then just skip that sutta and go on to the next one.
Perfect. Thank you. And then the next question is, when dealing with everyday problems through kindness, how do we know when to draw the line between intervention to help and when to step away to allow people to learn through their own mistakes?
I think a lot of the time, that's a very good question, actually. And I think a lot of the time, people need to learn from their mistakes. I think that's actually very important that we give people that independence and ability to learn. So I suppose it depends on the degree of harm that is involved. Yeah, if it is a very high degree of harm that is involved, then probably good to step in, because it's just too dangerous otherwise if you don't step in. So if it is very harmful, then you step in. But a lot of the time, I think it is actually very useful to allow people to just explore and try and to make mistakes. Yeah, and instead of always helping them, instead of that, give them instead emotional support. Yeah, give them love. Give them compassion. Tell them that mistakes are okay. Yeah, everybody makes mistakes in the world. Don't worry if you make a mistake. I will love you regardless. In fact, I allow you to make mistakes because I know you will learn from it. So go out there, make mistakes. And if you need my support, I will always be there to support you. And I think this kind of attitude is actually much more important than always making sure that we get it right. And one of the things that the kind of mistakes that we make sometimes, and we have children, we want our children to do really well at school, yeah, and we want them to kind of get straight A's and these kind of things. And sometimes we push our children really hard to do really well. But sometimes all of this pushing can be counterproductive. Sometimes it can destroy your joy in learning, yeah, because if everything is pushed, then there's no joy anymore. And it's much more important to learn the joy of learning in school, because when you learn the joy, well, then you have learning for a lifetime. You will always like to learn. And the people who are really successful in the world are the ones who always like to learn. If you only learn for a while and then you're fed up with it, you're not going to make it very far. So allowing one's children to fail sometimes at school as well is okay. Some of the greatest people in the world were complete failures at school. Yeah, we know that. Some of them were really bad. Even Albert Einstein apparently did really bad when he was a young man. He was in primary school. He was terrible, apparently. He turned out to be one of the greatest physicists ever. So don't worry too much about those things. The most important thing to give to people around us, our family, our children, is love, is kindness, is care, a sense of security that we will be there for them and we will do what is necessary to give them that support. Yeah.
Thank you. And then I think the last question we have that has been written down is, in modern day philosophy and science, it is often said that human connection and social relationships is a necessity as important as food and shelter. Is this true in Buddhism too, or is it defined as a want/desire rather than a need?
It is both a desire and a need. It is both. And I think it is important to realize that when we practice the Buddhist path, that things are gradual and we cannot just wish our desires away and just throw them away. Human connection is actually very important to us. So what you learn is you learn to have a more skillful human connections. Yeah, you learn to use them in a way whereby you have more kindness, you have less ill will, less aggression, less anger in those human connections. And so you gradually shift those human connections towards something more positive. So don't worry too much about the attachments you have in life and the desires that you have, because it is very deep-seated. It's going to be a long way on the path before you can give up those attachments. Instead, channel it in a positive way. Make your family life into a life where you practice the Dhamma. Make your office life a life where you practice the Dhamma. All our human relations should be Dhamma practices, and then we're really on the right track. And then down the line, what you will find is that if you really do this in the right way, you will find that you actually start to lose some of your attachments. Yeah, your attachments actually go down. A person who is naturally happy is also a person who is less attached, because we have more independence inside of us. And you find that when you are less attached, you actually love your family. You love your kids, your whoever it is, in a better way, in a more wholesome way than if you have too much attachment, because you start to be able to see what is really beneficial for your children. Very often when we have too much attachment, what we see is our desires, what we would like our children to be like, so that, because it's almost like we take our children to be an extension of our own ego. Yeah, if our children behave well, then we are proud of them. If they behave badly, we feel terrible about them. It's always like that. Yeah, this is the way the world is. But if you have real love for your children, it's like you want their best. You don't care how it affects you. You only care how it affects your kids. And that is a far better way of loving your family and your kids in particular. Yeah. Okay, everyone.